first of all, very, very warm welcome. You are the founding batch of the Champions program. I think this is, going to be critical, I think, as a collection of experts who care about software, who care about quality, who care about delivering great software at a high quality. I think you will sort of determine the direction and really be the DNA of this Champions program and of this sort of core community that we're planning to build out from here on forward. So thank you all for volunteering to be part of this. We hope to have give you a lot of value. We hope that all of you have an opportunity to learn from each other, share your work, share your best practices, and as a host, we hope to sort of give you that opportunity and give you that value. So thank you all for joining. Ravi, you want to just maybe spend a couple of minutes talking about vision and our community programs?
Sure, Praveen. Hopefully you can all hear me well. Ultimately, it's all about how do we create beautiful, delightful experiences for the user, right? In a world where digital interactions have become the norm and they continue to increase exponentially, how can we make each of those digital interactions the best that they can be? Ultimately, that's what we want. And this platform is really a way for us to enable each of you who are experts, champions, to share best practices with each other, share ideas, and learn and grow. And if you could go to the next page, Praveen, four specific initiatives. Test University, we launched it recently. Already have over 2,000 users, and we continue to grow that user base on a daily basis. Open source, we have built on it and happy to give back. We'll continue to give back. I've worked with well over 4,000 projects over the last 3 years. And this program, the Champions program, a platform for all of you to collaborate. And we'll continue to invest in open events, whether it's Breakpoint Summit or a Summer of Learning or others. You'll continue to see us invest in those open events. So thank you again. We're delighted to host all of you and look forward to an engaging fireside chat. Praveen.
Awesome. Thanks, Ravi. Thank you. All right, let's move on, I think, to sort of the main event. I promise to keep as much time as possible available for this. I'm really, really happy to introduce all of you to David Burns, who heads our open source program and also sort of, looks very closely into sort of how we work with different open source projects. He as all of you know, he's been a key part of the Selenium project. BrowserStack also recently announced the acquisition of Nightwatch, and we're keeping Nightwatch open source, and David is part of the team, or is heading the team that has continued to contribute into Nightwatch and potentially other open source projects. So David, I'm gonna hand it over to you. I'll stop my share, or do you want me to continue sharing and keep this slide open?
I'm happy for kind of us to just put everyone's face on if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, let's do that. Great.
That way we're not kind of small and hidden in the side view.
Makes sense.
Let's be exciting and have a chat about this. Welcome everyone. I am super excited by this, and I hope everyone else is. So today I've got a couple sample questions, but I would like this to be as realistic as possible, off the cuff. Things like that. One of the things that's near and dear to BrowserStack's heart is kind of the idea of like digital transformation, continuous improvement. As testers, or kind of SDETs, or anything that you want to kind of call yourself nowadays, it is kind of key to everything, right? Every single business nowadays is a tech company, even if they don't believe they are. Even kind of car companies, right? Like we need to embrace this. So I'm going to go through this theme. I'm going to start with my sample, and then we'll just see how things go. And to I'm going to direct my first question to kind of Nakul, because like it's interesting to see how the world is shaped over the while, and then I'll just kind of randomly pick people from there. So we'll go from the inception of BrowserStack to where we are now. Lots has changed in the world. We've seen things grow from mobile, desktop, and other consumer platforms. How do you think these platforms are going to evolve over time, and how do you think that's going to impact our users?
Sure. Yeah, I think when we started, we were only solving the problem of IE testing, only for I6, 7, 8, 9, and that was our own problem. Testing in I9 was easier. I7, 8 was really pain in the ass. No offense to Microsoft, but it was. I suppose as the business evolved, as we listened to our users, they said, "Oh, I work on Windows. I don't have Safari. Can you give Safari on Mac for testing?" Then it evolved to mobile devices. Obviously, started with emulators. People said, "Oh, this is too slow." And back then, emulators were really bad. That I don't know how good they are today. I haven't heard always good words, but back then they were really, really painful. ARM simulators or emulators used to run on Mac or Windows boxes, and it was like really pathetic. We spend our years optimizing and making better, and fast forward. I think we started with emulators, moved to real devices because experience was bad, and some of the times it works on emulator than works on real devices. Fast forward, people are asking for smart TVs, people are asking for Xboxes, people are asking for series, people are asking for living room devices, wearables, and all the stuff. So I think if we did some market research on it, and they're like, people are consuming internet over 5 billion devices, and there are 50 million developers building for these devices, right? So I think that's just crazy, and a lot of things I think are not even that like they're used by consumers, but not that much development happens from developer side, like say refrigerators, right? Like I have a refrigerator which has some Android home automation and stuff, and it's sad, but it's at least a good start, right? So so that's where I suppose internet is going. I suppose everyone not just from companies transforming to digital companies. I think consumers wants internet in everything. I think that's how I, as an engineer, thinks. That's how the whole world is moving towards. How to think as an engineer, I think we'll probably have to figure out. I think we were worried about how do we do web testing better and faster. We have to figure out how do we do flat across all these experiences, do a great experience building, right? So the problem is not just about scale. Problem is also about fragmentation, and problem is also going to be about genres. I think we were happy about functionality. At least when I started BrowserStack, I was happy with functionality. Then I realized, oh, it works. There is extra pop-up. The logo has changed. Someone has moved things around. There was visual testing. Then today, speed testing is a great problem for everyone. Everyone wants to make sure websites are fast. And I think so. I think genre of testing is getting more expanded, fragmented as well. Quite a lot, almost decent amount of us do some part of performance testing. Is my APIs going to scale, right? Things like this load testing, performance testing, not just speed testing. So I think it's getting fragmented in all the three ways, at least what I have seen so far. And yeah, I think looking forward to what else is there.
Yeah, it definitely has changed. I kind of, at least in my career, and I don't want to say how long I've been doing this job for, because I give my age away. But like things have changed quite significantly, and kind of the tooling around this has changed significantly over the time. Some things have been good ideas, some things have been really, really awful ideas along this way, and this kind of helped us with this. Like, not naming tooling because kind of tools come and go, but what kind of are the best practices that people feel have changed in strategies and things like this? And I'm going to pick on Sowmya first, if that's okay. Like, how is your view and strategy around kind of all of this changed in kind of say the last 10 years, or like, and where is it going to?
Right. So where to start? That's a lot actually, if I can pin into, but so when we see the whole digital transformation or the digital DNA being built, there are always the early adopters, and then there are someone who catch up on this journey, and then people move on to the next one. The whole lot of challenge in this has been basically the skill set. And also the second one is the test data, because if you see the ERP giants, there are some companies who are still on-prem and heavily dependent on the data, and companies who are having these ERP built-in setup. It's whole lot painful journey to actually onboard automation as part of this. It makes it even more complex when you're actually bringing in components driven development, and you want to integrate the entire full stack of right from the UI till the backend, the entire the automation. That's where the challenge is. But what I have seen over the period of time is from the way we started from the record to playback, and then the journey of Selenium and the adoption of WebDriver IO, Nightwatch.js, and now Cypress. I mean, there's a whole lot of tool that's there in the market. But at least I'm happy that there is an awareness and the acceptance that we have to bring in as a part of our journey. It should be imperative within the company. So that acceptance is there.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Mili, did you, I saw you nodding away through that. Do you have anything that you wanted to expand on what Sowmya said?
Yeah, I can add a couple of things, and I very much agree that there's sort of where to start when starting to talk about this subject. What we have seen sort of over the years is that both the engineering practices and testing and everything is sort of changing continuously. And that's where we also need to adapt. And what we have done sort of in the company where I work in Visma is that we are also embracing this continuous delivery, DevOps, public cloud, even though perhaps public cloud is also limitations in some sense with some governments, perhaps in the Nordics, especially. So I think there is sort of a lot to take on in here and tackle, but yeah, it's definitely very exciting sort of change, like going from waterfall way of working to agile to DevOps and trying to sort of continuously improve step by step. I think that is really sort of yeah, the core things that everyone needs to do. And I think everything today is sort of like a software company, as you mentioned in the beginning. So and that again brings us back to the sort of skill set, like what are these companies that haven't sort of created software before that suddenly are becoming a software company? How are they sort of viewing things, and where do they start with their sort of technical literacy or journey? Or so yeah, there's a bit difficult questions to answer, like with only 2 minutes or perhaps sort of with only one topic.
No, it's I think you've both hit on it really well. And kind of like things are progressing, at least for kind of at least the top echelon of engineering companies, and so kind of, you know, I consider, like I said at the beginning, most companies nowadays are tech companies, even if they don't realize it. Like Google is an advertising company first and foremost, even though they have a lot of engineers, right? Like,
so I think so just kind of. Sorry, David. Yeah, please complete.
No, carry on.
I think just to add, I suppose the at least my perspective on things, I think the digital transformation was a concept, I think 10-15 years back, and each of the new disruptive framework, let's say from waterfall to agile, people will get 10 years to transform. I think one thing which COVID changed is, I think it has given everyone very small time to migrate. And one thing has happened is a lot of people who are thinking, okay, they have 5-7 years program to convert them to software companies. I think they realize they have to probably do it in 2 years. So if you see the last couple of years have made all the business realize they need to migrate very fast. Though if you see the car automation, like Tesla did it to cars, and everyone is now thinking about, and the car industry has transformed altogether, but it still have time. I don't think I know the valuations are crazy for Tesla, but everyone has time to transform, and they could take their time because the industry operates in a different way. But COVID has just transformed everyone's thought process overnight. And so that's been the big kicker in this area. While I think that's true with automation, I think automation probably being used by engineers. Engineers, I suppose, disrupt more aggressively. I think they only take 3 to 4 years to disrupt the new technology, new tool set, new mindset. So I suppose from there, tooling would keep changing more aggressively as more engineers are coming out in market, more businesses are becoming tech.
Yeah.
Disruption in software is going to be a lot more aggressive than the industry transformations and stuff.
Exactly. I wasn't going to bring COVID into but you are 100% correct. I think kind of the last 2 years there has been a massive movement, and this is where kind of like I was heading in this direction. Is like there's been this massive movement in how people look at how software is developed. Like we know, like Charity Majors, who's a big advocate for kind of how people should be observing their code and things like that. It's like loves talking about how we should be pushing the envelope and deploying, and within 15 minutes of code hitting a repository. That sounds scary to a lot of people, and it's kind of what's now considered the gold standard. However, one of the things when I was looking up, like doing a bit of research for this, was like the DevSecOps survey said only about 12% of organizations are in a position to say they have already automated their day-to-day efforts. And that seems quite low. And, going back to kind of like some teams have had to speed this up very quickly. They were planning to do this over a couple of years while they worked next to their colleague, and then next to their colleague disappeared. And 35% are at a stage of achieving partial automation. So kind of, you at least get it all the way to button press, and then it does the release. While QA is clearly helping some of these things, because like QA and automation engineers tend to kind of think about like, how can we make things boring? And if we make things boring, we can automate it. Like that is kind of the general philosophy of automators. Do we still need a kind of a good strategy in moving towards that as part of digital transformation? I'm going to pick on Maaret, because Maaret has a great breadth of both exploratory testing and automation to kind of help with this. But like, do you think companies are going that way? Do you think companies still need to be driving that way a lot, or do you think we're there already?
So first of all, there's so many companies that I kind of, just listening on the conversation about industry trends makes me feel very disconnected with the idea that depending on the company and depending on the team within the company, you are not experiencing whatever the trailblazers in the industry are doing. So we're all over the place. That's kind of first part of it.
Agreed.
And I do notice that there is an aspiration of adding a lot more automation. And well, personally, I have this kind of a strong belief that if we would frame automation a little differently, rather than kind of like aiming for 100% automation or talking about automating all of this or ask questions like that survey was asking, we would probably be doing a lot better, because we would be using less time on arguing about the thing and more time on actually getting where we want to be. So I keep talking about we care for results in testing. Test automation is actually a way of documentation that stays up to date. It is helping us. Today I was doing this little bit of a preaching almost to our management that please, don't look at the coverage like that. Doesn't say anything. It is not a useful way of looking at things. Out of the 10 problems that we find in the level of system testing, kind of like exploring or looking at things from a system perspective, 9 out of those 10 will actually be automated on unit test level, and breaking that kind of in-team barrier of the levels. That's really something we need to get, and we are not getting there if you keep emphasizing that you want to, automate all of the tests. Because unit tests, we think of them as designed rather than tests. They are a different beast in many ways. But we need to kind of put all of this together. Similarly, I was preaching about this idea that you really need to talk about the results. You really need to look at how much problems do we end up having in that production? How do we collaborate? How do we bring that information and energy in designing and investigating really good software experiences for our users? How do we do that? And testing, especially exploratory style, like when you make an insight, sure, document it. And if I have to document, why not document in automation? But if you frame it rather as, we are solving problems for our users, it would probably create a better place for good quality rather than the one where we are just trying to automate the manual work. We need to really reframe this completely.
Oh yes, wholeheartedly. Like I cannot use words to explain how much I support what you've just said. I think kind of like I think the people who really appreciate that you can't automate everything is the people who automate everything, right? And kind of they spend a lot of time just going, well, actually, I can do this, but it's not going to be of value. And I can, there's a lot of that. And I think kind of the one thing I'm just going to focus on something you said there, of kind of like the exploratory testing is about the experience and kind of elevating that experience. And if you can get that right into why not automate it? Like I've never heard anyone phrase it that way, but like I know exactly what you mean, and kind of I could see both Sowmya and Mili like going, yes, this, I wholeheartedly support this. Mili, did you want to kind of add or kind of expand on what Maaret was saying there? Because like I think we all were nodding away while she was talking.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and Maaret is sort of really good with words and putting sort of a lot of my thoughts into really sort of understandable statements. So I appreciate that very much with Maaret and reading her blogs and following her as well. What I also wanted to add, one aspect that, and very much agree with this, we are in my company where we are working, we are also not looking at numbers. We are sort of, our goal with automation is basically that we are confident when a change, for instance, is deployed to main or committed, it should automatically sort of go towards production, because before hitting the delivery pipeline, we should all have spent X amount of time with sort of exploring it, trying out, figuring out what needs to be automated, what doesn't, at which level, etc. And also sometimes we are sort of hiding this behind the feature toggle if we are a bit unsure whether it works properly or not, and experimenting with our end users and getting feedback. But one thing that I would definitely like to add is also who is responsible and how the teams are built up, which is really important, I think, when it comes to these changes. So having sort of a lot of siloed ways of working like we used to work, and we had this sort of transformation for almost a decade in Visma, where sort of you have someone who develops something, you have an own test department that gets things thrown over the wall, and then when everything is done testing, you throw it over to operations deploy it, something doesn't work, everyone is blaming each other. But actually when you say that, look, this is the team, you're responsible from A to Z, basically you build it, you deploy it, you create it, you operate it, like you are in the driver's seat, and you get to call Saturday evening if something doesn't work. By doing that, I think everyone gets a bit more ownership to the sort of the quality and testing as well, and everyone wants to make sure what they contribute to is actually working. So I think that is also one aspect that is sort of important to take into consideration here, sort of who is owning what, who is responsible what, who is accountable for the different things.
Yeah, definitely. Sowmya, did you want to add anything? Sorry, I will get back to you, Maaret. I did see your hand right, and I will get back to you.
Yeah, maybe I just want to add, I completely resonate with what Matt just mentioned about the way automation is being treated, or it's been shed in a very different light, which is absolutely wrong. But just taking a step back to see why this is happening is also one of the major criteria to understand, okay, how we can curb this from happening, actually. So if you see now more than ever, all the aspiring QA, manual QA engineers who wants to represent themselves as an automation testers to somewhere satisfy the pleasure of, okay, I'm also coding and doing something, and they do take this leap and come into the automation. There is the initial hindrance of accepting or understanding the process of how to do it. But once they get hang of it, then they are like, it's like kid in front of a candy store. I just want to automate everything, anything that I see on the UI. So there comes a very importance of the leadership it may be a developer or an architect or a QA lead, whoever it is, to guide the team members to actually strategize the thinking, put a guardrail to say what's necessary, what's not, automate what matters to us rather than what should not. If something is mattering to us, we have to say where we have to automate. Not everything needs to be in the UI level. Not everything needs to be in the API level. So there is a fine balance that we have to draw. Right now, I see this is something that's missing in by and large, the entire QA community. So maybe if we address this and educate bigger QA community to see, to draw the fine balance, I think we can arrest this situation. Yeah, that's the point I just wanted to make to the Maaret's point. Yeah.
Good. Maaret, what did you want to say? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's I needed to write it down so that I remember. Just a quick comment on Mili. It's actually interesting how you're describing an industry trend, that the team topology is kind of designing organizations is now the way we are planning and coordinating our testing.
Cool. I'm going to move on to my next question, and there's a similar one in the chat, so I'm going to kind of combine the two. Like talking about trends, trendsetters, there is a current trend, at least in the market, for kind of helping people with their automation around using AI or machine learning to kind of help with the testing. Where do you think we are in terms of maturity? Is there a lot of hype? Do you think this will be like the norm within 5 years? I'm going to start with Nakul on this one, and then I'll kind of move around.
I don't. First of all, I don't. I think I would be naive if I say it's a hype. I think we are seeing the AI being used successfully in a lot of places. I think Facebook is a classical example in social media. I believe like my first interaction with AI technology was recommendation systems, right? You go to e-commerce and you like some product, they'll tell you better products. And I think same for movie recommendation engines and Netflix and stuff like that. And then now it's, I think, used. And now it's being used. Sorry, I think so. Can everyone mute themselves? Sorry, is it just me?
No, I heard someone coming in there. But...
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I think so. And if you see the newer disruption which is happening in the last few years, from autonomous cars to I think IoT, and how everyone is thinking about making chatbots. I think chatbots have done some amazing I think applications around AI as well. So I think there are segments which is doing really good work with application of AI. Specifically in testing, I suppose there is opportunity. I haven't come across something yet, and I have seen small implementations of AI, let's say, for detection of leakiness. I think Google and Facebook have some amazing blogs around it, on how they are implementing the technology for stability and flakiness of their builds and stuff. But at large, either from test recorder perspective, self-healing perspective, or figuring out which test suites to run when someone commits a code, I think all those application areas I do see. I haven't come across something really mature yet, but I do see some of these problems will get solved in the next 5 years. I still don't agree we would be able to generate code test cases in an AI way, in an automated way, because that's as good as being able to write like my application in an automated way, because the logic is just as similar, right? When I'm building an application, I'm writing the similar flow for testing it. I don't know if that's going to get disrupted, but yeah, I've been surprised in the last few years, so I would be happy to be proven wrong as well.
Yeah, no, I kind of wrote this question, and I kind of, something you've just said has kind of changed my mind on where the question was originally going to go. It was around kind of like, and it goes back to my first part of the discussion of trailblazers, of kind of like AI for use in kind of helping figure out which tests to run. Before BrowserStack, I worked at Mozilla. And like you make a change to Firefox, and you could be generating like 2,500 compute hours worth of building and testing, and so kind of that's expensive, and like so we applied things. We never ever called it AI or machine learning. We just went like, oh, we could figure out where this should be. But I can kind of see what the direction in like that movement of kind of helping people drive down costs and be more specific in their tests to kind of get to that 15-minute gold standard.
Yeah, I suppose more than the cost, it's a productivity of engineer because he's waiting and then he's going
Yeah.
for a coffee break and stuff. So
yeah, or the XKCD of kind of sword fighting. Why aren't you working? Because my code's compiling, right? Like we've all been there. Mili, did you want to add anything there? Like, do you have any thoughts on kind of how AI or ML could kind of impact how you see testing or kind of quality?
I think there are some good examples, and actually I think like on this question, I have access to this OpenAI beta program. So I actually wrote a question in the OpenAI asking it, what do you think about AI and machine learning in testing? And actually I have written down the answer that I got, and this was 3 days ago, so the answer might have changed. Actually OpenAI answered, I think AI ML in testing is a hype at this point, but I think it's real, and I don't think it's mature yet. That was the AI answering them itself. So I think that was quite interesting answer. But jokes aside, I think there are some good sort of use cases that we're seeing coming, like with the compute vision, where sort of things are recognized on the screen, buttons are recognized and automatically sort of found how you should access these buttons, etc. Like just with some examples, like GitHub Copilot being one example, easier to write code, giving you suggestions, etc. But also there are some other tools without naming a lot of them now or name dropping. Of course, we see in different areas that they are sort of starting to mature and help. And a lot of these companies using machine learning in the background today, if you go to their sites, you won't actually see like, we are using AI, we are using machine learning. But if you were visiting their sites like 3 years ago, the only thing you could read was AI machine learning, nothing else. So I think one of the trends is that sort of the hype, just having some AI or machine learning in the background is sort of going a bit down, but actually the usage of it's going up in the background. And in my current company, we also use machine learning in many different ways, like scanning receipts, automatically putting into a booking system or accounting system, making some suggestions, etc. So. But no one is sort of advertising it as, look, we have this cool AI machine learning. So yeah, that's cool.
Sowmya.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to this topic because it so happened that yesterday I just got an opportunity to meet one of the startups who are building one such tool for the automation, where they're integrating with the Pendo or different other analytics tools just to see the user behavior of the entire application. At the moment, they are serving for the healthcare applications and retail, specifically e-commerce applications, and see what's user actually doing when they land up in your website, and how many are dropouts, how many actually go to the shopping basket, how many actually buy. So there is an automatic learning that's been happening, and this information is being fed on a day-to-day basis. So there is a structured learning for this machine that is happening. So it can guide the team back to see which journey of the user matters the most. So testers can come up with a test suite just to ensure that there is a robust performance of the application of this user journey. So coming back to the question, is it a hype right now? It's an overhype. But will it gain attraction in next 5 years? Definitely. You can see some tools, some solutions coming up in the market, which can definitely ease out the overall effort for the development teams.
Yeah. Yeah, I can kind of see it that way. I have definite opinions around like Copilot and things like that. I think kind of we're literally light years away from being able to use it to generate meaningful code when we want something. But it's that kind of like, if it takes away some of my cognitive load, then that's awesome, right? I think kind of there is definitely value in that, and kind of helping spot some of these interesting errors as they kind of creep up, and which kind of leads me into another area of kind of my thing, and then I will double check the chat and see if there's any other kind of chat questions that people might have. So it's kind of related to the AI, kind of not. What are people's opinions around security? Because like privacy and security are be all and end all, truthfully, of software nowadays. Like you can literally tear companies apart and kind of send them under if they don't invest in these areas properly. Going to kind of Nakul's comment earlier around like IoT is important. IoT is also known for having no security, and kind of like people's fridges are bringing down or trying to bring down like websites like google.com through bot networks. So kind of what are people's thoughts on security and testing and CI/CD? Like how can we kind of make sure that these are not afterthoughts? Because like for years we've seen testing being the afterthought of development, and now kind of it's shifted left, and I don't really always like the term shift left, but like it's kind of shifted left, but now security is that weird and wonderful afterthought. How can we bring that in? Maybe AI, maybe not. Like how can we improve this? I'll start with Nakul and then we'll kind of see how we go from there.
Sure. So I think kind of a little disagree. I don't think security is an afterthought. Plus, I think security is fairly mature in its own sense. Like we had these static application testing tools and dynamic applications, and they are fairly mature, at least in Java. And probably a lot of teams I speak to, they have good exposure or being using such tools in their past experience. And surprisingly, few of them have integrated in their CI/CD pipeline as well. And I'm not talking about the, I think, like the newer generation companies, even the more older ones as well. But said that, I suppose the push has increased because of the recent times and the security being spoken about a lot more than it was in the past. That I completely agree. That has made a lot of people a lot more aware about it and making sure they are being taking proactive steps around it and bringing it much earlier into our, I think, software development lifecycle than an afterthought, which is still, I would say, majority of the market. Maybe yes. So that's, I think, on the security. Yeah, I think that's my high-level thoughts. Did you ask something else as well?
I've muted myself. Sorry, I muted myself there. No, that was kind of my question, and it was kind of like, is automation there to help us? Is it not? Because
I think it's there. I think it's fairly. I don't think. I still believe it's a little more complicated problem than I think. Like in software testing, we still have mature tools like Selenium and some other tooling available out there, which do a good amount of job, or Appium and things like that. I think in the software testing, it's not there. I think you have good tools, but they aren't as mature where I could probably at least aspire, while like Maaret put, for complete automation. I don't think we will get there. We are not there in security today. We could probably do the low-hanging fruits, like very much like stability testing. Right? X does a good job, but it does only 30-40%. The rest of it still needs to be done manually. I think security is in that state, at least in my experience and exposure so far.
Okay, Maaret, you have thoughts?
So I wanted to share two ideas basically on this one. First of all, I think that out of security, updatability is actually the aspect of security that we see in testing. It's not so much of what we think first when we think of security testing. It's the fact that we can deliver and release frequently, because I do remember at least like having the 27 different versions out there for a major product that was kind of installed by the customers, not remotely upgradable. Then there was a security vulnerability. Like it halted the entire company. That was reality still 10 years ago. And now the reality is we are looking into continuous release, killing older versions, even having just single deployments and scalable deployments in cloud, depending on what software we're building. But we are looking at updatability, and that's where security in testing perspective particularly comes in. And the other part I wanted to mention, in the last year in Finland, there was this one company that went just bankrupt basically for leaking people's therapy information. I was one of the victims. I went to therapy and all of my stuff is available online internet. Like, I have had to deal with the fact that everything I told in the most confidential setting that you can ever imagine, it's now out there for sale. And the only compensation for me as a user is 100 euros if I'm willing to spend a day, where I earn, by the way, more than that 100 euros of compensation. If I want to spend a day in filling all kinds of forms, I can get 100 euros out of the bankruptcy thing. So business-wise, businesses go bankrupt, but people's lives are actually severely disrupted. I feel lucky in many ways I can talk about this stuff because, I don't think it was that relevant from my perspective, but I have many friends who are actually having anxiety over the fact that this is the reality, and it happened for tens of thousands of Finns.
Oh yeah, and so that's exactly what I meant by kind of it can destroy companies if people do not put a lot of thought into it. And it's not necessarily like I could put a lot of security in my stuff, but there could be IoT out there who's going to take down my company because they've not put any security in, right? Like there's multiple layers to that. One of the things that kind of you mentioned there was also about updatability of software. Coming from a browser vendor, and I kind of worked there for many years, it reminds me of a story. So it was one of the kind of the things that made me want to go to Mozilla, because kind of I thought the engineering culture there sounded really cool. There's a security program or like competition called Pwn to Own. It happens multiple times a year, and the idea is that they will hack mobile phones, they will hack browsers, and then browser vendors will then pay all these researchers money, which like comes out of a pool that they put into. And there was a story, like the thing that drove me to Mozilla was there was the VP of engineering. It's a chap called Mike Shaver, and he kind of threw the gambit down where he told everyone in a huge public forum that Mozilla will fix these bugs in 10 fucking days. Excuse my language. But that's his thing. And they did it in 8. And this is kind of like 2008, 2009, where kind of releasing a desktop application at speed was a lot of work. Nowadays we're on mobile phones, we're on web applications, we can kind of do these things a lot quicker. And so kind of the updatability is actually an important aspect that I don't think a lot of people fully appreciate nowadays when it comes to how we look at these things. So yeah.
Maybe we are intrigued in the full version of the story. How did you do it in 8 days?
Oh, like I think kind of people were pulling all-nighters, and they got well, it wasn't just all-nighters. It was due to the multinational shape of Mozilla. It was kind of handed off between multiple people to get done, and like at that stage, the update code like was always just pushed into an FTP server that then local versions would download. And this was for a 0 day. So a 0 day is a bug that is out in the wild and could be exploited now. So you kind of like, and so it was, and I can't remember the exact issue, but it was kind of, it was the culture that kind of drove me to Mozilla at the time, because it just sounded like really cool. Like, hey, these people understand quality, they understand security, they understand all of these different things. And I wanted to go work there, and kind of was there for quite some time. And the culture was always about kind of growing things, building things at speed. And it was always interesting. So yeah. But security was always like, for me, like I learned a lot about security that I had no idea about. And nowadays kind of I've become a Luddite, you know. You won't get IoT in my house. I just don't trust it. Mili, Sowmya, did you want to add anything in there?
I want to bring in one aspect with regards to the security, especially circling back to our concept where we were talking about digital transformation. The companies who are already been in the tech space for long, there is awareness and all measures are already taken right from the design aspect when it comes to the security. But like how Nakul rightly mentioned, the COVID fueled everyone to get onto the e-space, come to the e-commerce or the digital space. Because they have to get up and running, there's so many things that were sidelined or simply thought it was not a priority. And as we can see, the recent attack from the Log4j, there's so many companies who were badly affected by it. So the statistics simply, I mean, it's a no-brainer. You can actually see how many companies got affected because of this. And this is also a very good point to feed in back to these automation tools, because when we talk about a lot of automation, we are only on the browser level looking at the UI and nothing beyond that. We are not checking whether it is HTTP or HTTPS, whether it's following the network calls, whether it's following the protocols. And I mean, it's very rare that you find automation with these scripts checking in these protocols, the network calls and the responses and things like that. So it's a very good opportunity where people have to look beyond just the UI browser and give it a thought to do a deeper analysis of these tests.
100%. And there's also a certain amount of open source sustainability that really kicks in here around security. Like all the major cryptography libraries out there are all open source. It's good that they're open source because they can be audited much better than if they were closed source. But then there's a sustainability problem that comes in. It's like people just abuse this, and like Log4j was another example of kind of sustainability about kind of how we can improve those areas. That's like, this is my bread and butter at BrowserStack, is how can we improve sustainability around this and kind of make things better for everyone, because long term it's the right thing to do. Mili, did you have any thoughts on security there, or?
Yeah, I have a couple of, or many, but we can share a couple at least. It's sort of yeah, I can talk about this stuff for forever. But one thing that came to mind when Maaret also was sharing the story that happened in Finland, one actually thing that happened here in Norway as well, like during the COVID, they were developing this app where sort of if you were contagious that you will sort of share this information, etc. And here this was sort of like a actually success story. They managed to create this great app with a lot of resources in a week's matter of time. So it was like state of the art. Everything was continuous delivery. Everything was tested continuously. Everything was great. But they sort of didn't they forgot, or I'm not sure where sort of it happened, but about the privacy part. And actually, even though everything was sort of like a success story, it was stopped due to privacy issues. But then, of course, later redesigned and everything. And that also, I think, highlights like the importance of security and privacy. You can do everything else perfectly, but if you forget those parts, like it will be for nothing. So I think that is important. And another thing that I want to share is also like that I think we need to think about security testing on many different layers, like everything from this statical code analysis, dynamic testing, like manual penetration testing and all of these things. And when you have come to a certain level, I think one good thing is also to apply for these different bug bounty programs where you will have sort of the world top hackers, almost like at least white hat hackers, they will give it a go at your services as well. And even though it might cost some money in the end, I think that this is a great thing that you are also offering to your end users. They can sort of be sure that at least you have ruled out the most obvious security issues. So I think having these different layers of security, almost like a Swiss cheese with having holes, but of course you are sort of damming them up here and there. So in overall, you have a great security.
Yeah, definitely. And most of the security bugs nowadays in most browsers are when you chain together 5 security bugs that kind of look innocuous. But if you have Swiss cheese model or kind of defense in depth, you have a lot of protection. And I'm a big advocate for it because kind of like as much as I know about security, I've also realized I know nothing about security, and so kind of like where I can add these layers, I do, but at those times I just go, I need a professional here. Cool. Right. Oh, I've lost my question. There was a question that I wanted, that I saw. There we are. Kind of, because we've been all over the place, I think kind of it goes back to kind of first principles. For those who test on mobile devices, what is your strategies around trying to keep your kind of testing stable? Like on mobile is kind of the Wild West. Sometimes it can be easy to test, sometimes it can be super hard to test. Like, do you have any kind of pro tips that you've come across of like trying to help your company around mobile testing to kind of make things stable and kind of real world? Does anyone want to go for that?
I mean,
I can go first.
Go ahead.
Does that want to go first, David?
I think.
Go ahead, Jess.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I think the best thing that I have tried, like I'm a consultant, so I've been like in lots of organizations doing this, like ensuring quality and automation and test automation and all of this. And one of the biggest issues are people. Like, so even if you have like really good testing team and it's separated, like they do test automation, you will have developers screwing everything up. So one of the main principles is involve the developers in the test automation early on, and also like try to teach them about quality assurance, because like you need to prevent the issues from happening. And also if you have like really good test automation, it shouldn't be broken by the testers, like by the developers changing something, you know, buttons removed or whatever functionality changed without updating the scripts. So let the developers correct the scripts. That's the best thing. And do it like run the automation automatically. Like what we did, we did in one of the places I worked at, we had it like whenever somebody committed anything, then boom, a lots of tests started, and the tests were fast. And they didn't get that commit in unless the tests were passed. So it took a few minutes, but it was really good, because then the developers, first they were annoyed and why are we doing this? You know, it's stopping us from doing this. But then after a while, they started fixing the scripts as well, making sure they are always updated.
Yeah.
And also, after a while, they really appreciated it, because then they were really secure on like, oh shit, I can really like depend on this, and it's really good for me. I feel more confident, so they can give out their changes faster into production. So it was like really appreciated, and it worked very fine. And in the end, we had like continuous delivery and 95% test coverage, code coverage. So yeah, but in other places, very hard.
Yeah, I think that goes back to kind of one thing Mili said, which was kind of like tests should give you confidence, right? Like without a doubt should give you confidence. And then the thing that because Maaret is brilliant with words, like is that like tests are a very good way of making sure you have everything documented. And so if they're not updating their tests, then their documentation is likely to be out of date straight away. And from my experience in the open source world, if your documentation's not good, you're never going to build community. And that can even be in a company, right? Like you're not caring about that side of things. Obviously, you want good at user experience, because people shouldn't need documentation. But if you're not documenting things properly because your tests are bad, who knows what's happening.
And with the mobile, there are two aspects which I want to bring in here. So one is the mobile web applications, and then the mobile apps as such part of it. So mobile web applications, I mean, it's not much of a pain. It doesn't have much of a challenge. The whole lot of it is to check whether the UI is getting rendered properly or not, because the rest is going to work somehow. the effort is less, but the game is going to get a notch level above when it is an app, because we are dependent on the device and its OS. Each time there's a patch coming in, something is going to get broken. And it's not just the UI, it goes beyond that. It goes beyond the functionalities. And if there are any business switches, toggle functions involved, then it's like logarithmically high. So like you said, it's a wild, wild west. Testing mobile is like chasing a hyena in the forest. I just can say that you just don't have a goal. You just like keep running with the sound that you got, with the hope that you're just gonna hold it someday. But that's not gonna happen. I kind of really struggle even for today to bring in with a proper strategy for mobile apps, though I have made compromise with the mobile web applications to get my head around, but like apps are still, yeah, I can say pain in ass.
I think I'm laughing because it's true. I did a bit of mobile on when it was the window. I forget it was so long ago. Windows mobile phones, kind of before Android was really big. So kind of like 2010, working on Firefox for that, and I was just like.
But Windows was never big. I don't know why you were building for Windows.
You'd be surprised. Like it might not be big in one place. It's kind of like I have friends who used to work at Opera, and Opera was never very big except for certain countries, and then it was just massive. And then it's like, you know, Firefox was kind of mediocre except for like if you went to say Germany, where kind of the German government were telling everyone to use Firefox. Like, you know, there's these like uniqueness for each part of the world, which I think kind of as a multinational, it kind of adds to how you approach different testing, and analytics really comes into it. Like how you have to be watching it very carefully. Am I going for the right place? But you know, we dropped it in I think about 2012, and then did Firefox OS, which was an interesting project in itself. So
I think just to add to what I think Sowmya and Joseph said, I think, and Mili also touched on it earlier, I believe the 50% of the problem is it's someone else's problem. It has to be engineering problem. Engineers need to own it. Simple. Right? And the structure could vary, but that just probably starts from there. And every time throwing the ball over the wall to someone else, I think that leads to the issues. 25%, I would say, is software testing, whether done by engineers or QA. Sometimes it's done in a very ad hoc fashion where we see the responsibilities only to add test cases. It doesn't think of us building a software application. You need to have some architecture, you need to have some thought process of core concepts on how will you structure it, how will you write timeouts, how will you handle code structure, how will you write page objects, common code base, login functionality. I think that doesn't happen in a very structured way, like how you build web applications. Sometimes I think that we are not putting that much thought into software automation test cases. I think that leads to the 25% of the problem, and 25% mobile app is like Sowmya said. It's just hard to. There's not as much tooling available for mobile apps as much available for browsers, which makes it just a lot more complicated and harder to do. Yeah. It is my experience so far. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and kind of having worked in the standard space, kind of like Apple refused to do what Google want to do, and Google refused to do what Apple want to do, right? Like that is the key aspect, is they're competing against each other, and everyone else is just there, and we're like pulling our hair out, turning grey, and just going, right, how do we really deal with this? Right. Todd, I've been told you have your hand up. Sorry, I couldn't see you at the top there.
Yeah, no worries. My company has probably one or two, probably two of the top 25 mobile native apps. The issue that you got with mobile native app testing, at least in the automated front, is kind of what was already alluded. The maturity of the tools are not there. It's a lot different than web. Going to kind of bring this on BrowserStack. We're watching our error rate. Our error rate in web is under 1%. our error rate in mobile native app on App Automate is like 5. And it just happens to be how the industry is. That the tooling is not there, the support structure is not there. So what we do to make sure that we have it is we constantly revise our tests. I've got a fairly robust team of app automated testers. We tried a keyword-driven framework that worked for a while. We kind of went off of that because of the need to babysit and to maintain these tests. We're doing a rewrite now into Flutter, and we're hoping the Flutter, that we're starting to see things come out of Flutter that may help this situation. But there's not, when you write a test in web, it goes across the board to every browser, every OS, every browser. It really doesn't matter. You can't do that in native apps yet, but they're kind of going that way. So if you keep thinking, if you hold on tight, you watch where the industry is going, maybe you'll pick up, React Native, maybe a Flutter, anything in that instance, maybe you can get something. But I would recommend highly that you revise your tests, you look at what's important, do your P1s, then your P2s, P3s. As they break, fix them and keep them rolling and try to do what's important and keep up. And then, like everybody said, push left. Do all your assertions and unit tests. And if we could get Percy or somebody else, there's Applet tools out there that can do a native app comparison. That's the big thing. If we could get Percy to do a native app comparison, that would be a game changer. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
No, thank you for that. And kind of one of the things I find, so since you brought up Flutter, is some of the frameworks are not necessarily designed to support good testing practices. Like I've seen this with React Native. I've briefly looked at Flutter, so I don't know enough, but kind of the general consensus from like my helicopter view of looking at things is kind of, again, testing is an afterthought. But thank you for that, Todd. Devani, you had some thoughts.
Yes. First of all, I'm so glad that people are talking about this problem, that it is so different when it comes to mobile applications. I have actually been in the same area for the last 8.5 years, and I've gone through every kind of challenge. So the easier route that I see is be best friends with the development team, be best friends with the developers. That is something that will help you all the way, because that generally is very difficult to happen. And we generally get this response that it's working on my device and it's working fine and I can see it, you can't see it. And these are the ground level problems that me and the team have to face. Having said that, what I truly believe is the automation team has to be a part of the entire designing phase, PI planning phase. They have to be a part right from scratch when the developer starts developing, making sure that every screen, every element, every functionality has the required test automation IDs. I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we face when it comes to legacy applications as well. And for example, in my organization, we have 50 apps, mobile apps, legacy apps that the teams have been developing for years and years. And getting things done is very difficult. And to add on to it, and it's very important to understand the functionality as well, the business of the application, the kind of test suites that you want to execute. Because what happens is, in the process of trying to have a bigger coverage when it comes to mobile apps, you always have this concern that the tests are too long and it's taking a longer time for execution. So there's always a problem. There's always a challenge. But then I think we will have to take it like one step at a time. Be friends with the engineering team. That is what I've learned in my experience.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it kind of goes to what everyone is kind of talked about, kind of like collaboration beats everything.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Beats all the tooling in the world, and then from there you just kind of go, right, here's the best shape for kind of my company, and there is definitely not one tool that fits everything. Maaret?
So one of the things I'm noticing my day-to-day is that everyone says they is starting kind of involved from day one. The automation team wants to, the design wants to, the product owner wants to, every developer wants to, and there's no time anymore to do any of the work. So for me, I've had a very strong kind of bias or preference towards the idea that the best way to get the automation idea in place is to have the developers do the, even on mobile apps, the basic craft of the work that requires those IDs, and they don't have to kind of be there to make them do it, but they will suffer the consequences if they didn't. So instead of kind of babysitting, you care for yourself. That's a better strategy, at least in my books, any day.
Oh, definitely. Kind of like I don't think a lot of people really put this put a lot of effort into it. So yeah, no, good. With that, folks, I'm going to kind of wrap up the panel. I would like to thank the panelists for joining me today and kind of giving me their thoughts. This has been fun. I've loved every minute of it. I love hearing other people's thoughts, and kind of it's good to see how people approach different things and kind of think about the things. Like this is one of the key things about this industry. I think we're good at trying to figure out what's the best for everyone and then trying to share it. I think that's important. So thank you all for joining me. With this, I'm going to hand back to Praveen and he can take us through the next part. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Thank you, Sowmya, Nakul, Mary, and Maaret. It was a great discussion. Thank you. Awesome. Let me share my screen again. Let's bring up the rest of the presentation.
Sorry, I think Trisha wanted to say something. Or did I miss it?
Yeah, I was actually just wanted to add that point towards stability of mobile, but we were ending the conversation, so I just stopped that.
Please share, Trisha. Love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. I was just saying my experience about getting a stability over mobile was, as I agree with all the people, it's very hard. It was very hard. And we started also automating the non-functional part of it. It became like a challenge for us because it comes with various devices, various form factors of devices. Like you could have, let's say, Android different versions, iOS different versions. So it was really challenging for us also to maintain not even the functional, also the non-functional part of it. And we came into the point wherein we were thinking we should only have the sanity test, not the whole regression shoot, which needs to be maintained over mobile. That was the part from my side.
Thank you, Trisha. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. Awesome, great. I think yeah, we've concluded the panel discussion. So thank you again to all the panelists for taking the time out, and thank you to the rest of the folks on the call. I think chipping in with your thoughts and opinions and questions too. Let me just move on. I think quickly, I wanted to just do a few quick reminders, and then we've got sort of a competition we want to kick off, friendly competition we want to kick off, and then we have time for just we're going to set up some breakout rooms. So if you want to sort of break out into groups and get a chance to talk to everybody and meet everyone, it'd be a great opportunity to do that. So just a few reminders to everyone. I think we have a Slack channel. All of you should have gotten invites to join our Slack channel. Please do so. I think it's going to be a great starting point for all of us to just start talking casually and share share our learnings, share anything interesting that we think is of value to this forum. Please redeem your welcome kit if you haven't already done so. I think all of you have a couple of choices, so it's a very simple process. You just go in, pick what you want, and enter your address, and it gets shipped to you automatically. I think several people already have done this, but if you haven't, please do that. Check out the champions page on the website. I think Juhi can share the link to the website on the chat. And yeah, I think all of your profiles are up there. And it'd be great. It's always nice to see yourself out there with such a great sort of cohort or set of group of people. And yeah, send us your details. In terms of maybe a different photograph or a better photograph, or any details you think is of value to add in the profile. And lastly, I think we'll just share a poll question before the event is before the event is over. Let's go to the competition. So I think this is not a competition; it's a challenge. I think so. This is just a way for us to, I think, build engagement. I think one of the biggest objectives with our Champions program is to give all of you an opportunity to share your learnings, share your best practices, and we will use BrowserStack and all the channels we have available to amplify, to sort of get the word out to the larger community. So it's just a great opportunity for any one of you to make an impact and contribute to the larger testing and DevOps space. All we need is, and this is completely voluntary. You don't, there's no sort of requirement. It's completely up to you if you want to participate. We'd love to hear your thoughts on any of these topics around automation strategies, how you're putting in place CI/CD pipelines, either at previous companies or on your current organization. What are your thoughts on the whole, no-code revolution? Test and record, whether it's for testing or no code for building websites or mobile apps. Would love to hear your thoughts around that. Yeah, I think tell the world that you're part of this program, and yeah, just contribute in the Slack channel. I think those are some of the requirements, or not requirements, but some of the things we'd like you to sort of do as part of this challenge. We start the challenge today officially, and we're giving ourselves a quarter, so giving ourselves a couple of months at least to wrap this up. I think before we wrap up and move to our breakout rooms, I just want to take a moment. I wanted to thank Juhi for putting all of this together. She's been working on this almost single-handedly. So Juhi, if you could just turn on your video and wave your hands, and thank you for putting all of this together, getting all of us together for the Champions program. So thanks a lot, Juhi. And she's going to be your point of contact. With any questions, concerns you have, any ways in which you want to contribute, just reach out to her on LinkedIn. All of you will have an email address. So please go ahead and do that. Whenever you feel like doing that. So thank you again, all of you. I think at this point, what we'll do is, Juhi, you can maybe open up the breakout rooms, and yeah, feel free to join anyone and just have a chat. We have the event going on for another 10-15 minutes, so we'll keep it open as long as necessary. So thank you all for being part of this kickoff event. Really appreciate you. Awesome.
So hey everyone, I'm creating 3 breakout rooms, and you can choose to toggle between them. Feel free to introduce yourself. It's a good way to know each other and do a little icebreaker. So I'm just creating the breakout rooms.
There should be there is a button on the Zoom interface that shows breakout room, so you can just pick one that you want to join and go ahead.
I need to join a breakout room or?
I will assign you to one of the breakout rooms.
I can join. That's okay. Yeah, I can see. Room 2 has less people. I'll go there. Yeah.
Hey, Ramandeep.
Yeah, not many here.
Hey,
Hello.
hello.
Were we supposed to sign off now, or is it sort of?
There is one room where folks are active. So if you want to join that room, which is room number 2.
Ah, okay. Okay.
And if you want to drop off, feel free to do that.
Yep, sure.
What happened? Oh, we all moved back.
Yes.
I mean, imagine real life. This is very weird to think of, right?
But I think there was a message on the screen that it will probably move back to the room in some seconds. I believe it happened earlier than we expected, but anyways, I assume I am wrong. Someone tested it properly.
You're saying something on the lines of moving to mobile with the web application.
Yeah, I'm just saying that performance-wise, and I know the hardware is getting better, but the people are also building more not complicated, more I think performance-intensive applications. If you talk about gaming, I think it's just not possible. Even web application, even simple applications like e-commerce or stuff, I think people are expecting faster and better performance than you get from progressive apps converted to apps. I believe it's a good start, but as it becomes more serious and more successful, I think you move to native apps. Will it move to only progressive apps? I believe it's less likely in the short term. Long term, I think maybe.
Sorry to interrupt. Yes, there was a message. So because of the less forum, I merged all the rooms.
Sure, no worries. Everyone else has dropped off?
Yes.
Okay.
So we can wrap up.
Sure, Julie.
We have a Slack channel. Please feel free to interact with each other and introduce yourself and get the conversation started there. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope to see you soon in our next event.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining in. See you on Slack.